everybody, how you guys are doing? So I'm gonna do a little study today, so it's gonna be long, probably like less than 15 minutes. But so I've been doing verse mapping, and I was asking God, I want to do more on diving into scriptures, and I used to do that way back then when I got really into word, and I want to go back to that again. So I found this new technique called verse mapping. So you just take a verse and then research the verse. And then one particular person said, don't use any technologies or anything. Just use your Bible, select different versions, and Strongest Concordance. And it's kind of like, you guys don't know what it's kind of like a big like dictionary. And then I think that's been commentaries. And so that's what I've been doing. So I did that actually this morning. So I just picked a verse out. The first verse I did was Mark 10:38. But this one in particular I want to talk about is very interesting. It's Genesis 1:2. So in Genesis 1:2, it says, in the King James Version, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And I used the Christian Standard Version, and it says, now the earth was formless and empty, darkness covered the surface. So I just compare these two verses, and then I figure out which words were the same. If I pick up which words are the same, that means something in the verse, I will go to my concordance and look them up and look at the definitions. And one thing I learned while doing this, because we think in our minds, we're not seeing it spiritually, but we think in our minds that we see the verse that says, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. You would think like, oh, the earth was not formed. It was darkness. Nothing was going on. It was just nothing on the earth. But when you look at it spiritually and diving deep into the word, it's actually more is going on in the verse than it's saying. So I dive deep into it. And then, the words that I picked out was without form, void, darkness upon the face of the deep. So those are the ones I did. So I did half of verse 2. So I didn't do all of it. I did half of verse 2 in Genesis 1:2. So let's look at you guys don't have your Bibles, just turn to Genesis 1:2. I'm going to try to break it down how I got it. I hope it comes together. So we turn to Genesis 1:2, and we look at any version you have, and we look at the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. So I just cut it out right there. So the first word I looked up was without form. I said, okay, without form. So what does that mean? So when I looked it up in concordance, it said formlessness, confusion, unreality, emptiness, wasteland, wilderness, place of chaos, and vanity. So I said, okay, so the Hebrew word, I'm probably saying it wrong, but the Hebrew word for without form is tuhal. I'm probably saying it wrong, but that's what the word I looked up. And then when I go back, and then when I look into my commentaries, or I think it's called let me see. I think it's a Dake King James Version Bible, I think it's called. But that's what I use. I went to that because that's actually a good Bible, actually. So I went to that. And so I went to that, and I looked, and it shows you verses. And it says, without form means meaning, waste, and empty. The earth was not created. And the Hebrew word tuhal, or without form, in the beginning, but it became tuhal because of sin. I'm saying the word wrong. I know I'm not. I know I am. So, and it said it became without form because of sin. So the earth became without form because of sin. So what kind of sin? So that's when I started asking questions. I'm like, so what kind of sin that caused earth to become without form? So it brought me to Isaiah 45:18. And Isaiah 45:18 says this, For thus said the Lord that created the heavens, and God himself that formed the earth and made it, and he established it. He created it not in vain. He formed it to be inhabited. I am the Lord, there is none else. Okay, so while reading this, I'm like, God does not create chaos. So God didn't create the earth to be in vain. That's what I'm getting from it. So he created to be inhabited. So in my mind, it's like, okay, God did not create chaos. So how did chaos comes to the earth? And then so when I went to that, and it said, and I go on further to the verse, and it said, and earth was without form and void. So, okay, void. In the Christian Standard Version or any other version, it probably will say empty. So, what is void? So I looked that word up again in the concordance. So it says, in Hebrew, it's bohol, I think it is. But I'm butchering it. I know I am. But the word is emptiness. Void means emptiness, desolation. Of a void associated with chaos. Okay, it's associated with chaos. And when I was thinking about this, and I was like, okay, something was happening between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2. And I was like, okay, so there's an event going on between that. And we were trying to figure out what event was going on between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2. So now we know void or empty is something with dealing with chaos. So what is going on in this area? So what type of chaos was going on in this particular time? And then I look at the next word, darkness, and said, and void and darkness. So let's go here. And in Hebrew, darkness is hosek. I think I'm saying that right. And it means blackness, gloom. Often darkness has the associated meaning of gloom, despair, terror, ignorance, or hard to understand. And then I looked in my commentary. It said, obscuring the sun and consequent darkness always result of judgment, never of creation. So some type of judgment is going on during this. So, and I'm like, okay, now we know what some type of judgment going on with this. So it's coming together at this time. And then it says, darkness upon the earth and the face of the deep. Upon the face of the deep. So that's when everything ties up when we look up the word deep. So when I look up the word deep, is associative meanings of darkness. So darkness and deep comes together. And darkness of secrecy, controlled or inhabited by mysterious powers. So something is powerful going on in this area. So looking back to my my commentaries or my Bible, I think it's the Dake's Bible, I can't remember. But and I look it up, and it said, one thing it said about the Lucifer flood. And when I was looking at that, I was like, oh, okay. So during this time, a lot of scholars talk about this all the time. And they always say that, Lucifer rebelled against God, and God cast him out of heaven. And then he cast him out of heaven on this earth. So, and a lot of scholars believe that when he cast Lucifer to this earth, where this is earth, and it caught a lot of chaos and darkness. So it was a lot of stuff going on before God created man and woman in his image. So before he created anything else, but there was something going on. So in my mind, I was thinking like, so before Satan or Lucifer got cast out, the earth was inhabitable. It was livable. But when he decided to go against God, and God cast him down to this earth, chaos started happening. And then when I was reading, and it said Lucifer flood. So this flood was more devastating and lasted longer than Noah's flood, for it destroyed even vegetation. vegetation. So I think it's Genesis 2:5-6, and then Jeremiah 4:23-26 talks about this. Because let me go back. Let me get my Bible. Explain to me more the flood, because the earth. Okay, yeah. So we go that's going to the next part of 2, but we already know the earth was already covered with water already. So the earth was already covered with water, and I didn't get too much into that why the earth was covered with water, but I'll probably do that in my next study. But yeah, so we know that something is a chaos going on between Genesis 1 and Genesis 1:2. So you already know that. So we know that type of chaos is when God cast Lucifer down to the earth. So we already know that. So this is what I have notes I had gathered dealing with that, and it says the Hebrew phrase. I don't want to butcher it. We're just going to say the Hebrew phrase, what's without form, suddenly the earth was without form. We see this phrase again in Isaiah 45:18. So that's the one I read, where we read that God created heaven and earth, not in vain. So now if Isaiah says God did not create the earth without form and void, but Genesis 1 says the earth was without form and void, so what was going on? So that's what we're thinking. Along with many scholars, I believe an event took place between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2 described in Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28, wherein an archangel named Lucifer launched a rebellion against God and was kicked out of heaven, along with 1/3 of the angels who followed him in his rebellion, and he came to earth where he would become the God of this world. 2 Corinthians 4:4. So great was the impact when, in a sense, hell hit her earth that our planet suddenly became without form and void. So that was going on during that time in Genesis 1:2. So I hope I explained it as clearly as possible. But yeah, that's a little Bible study that I learned today from doing verse mapping. So God downloaded all that stuff in me. So yeah, I hope you guys study that for yourself and see what God gives you also. So I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.